Well, I asked him to arrest me and basically grabbed hold of me, put me in an arm lock, had my arm at my back so I was totally immobilised and could have thrown me down on the ground if he'd wanted to. He's a 91-year-old man. And I'm a 34-year-old, supposedly fit, healthy and strong young fellow.
Yeah, that's the way here. Oh, right there, okay. From there. That's the persuader.
Yeah.
Persuader. If you want to a rough neighbour, somebody comes around with you, and if he tries to get a hold of you, let him have it, right?
How does it work?
Let him have. Oh, sure, let him have it first. But then, if it's too bad, you pull this out. But that's, you know, that's heavy. If you hit somebody in the chest or anything, he'll get a setback. He'll get a setback. But
And how does is there a knife on it as well?
There's a knife there. They pull out that knife too if you want it. If it's too bad, you pull out the knife. But outside of that, you don't.
How does the knife work?
You just get it like that. You see, that's heavy. And it hits somebody in the tummy, right? In case you knock them kicking.
How does the knife work on it? How does the knife work on it?
It does. Oh yes.
How does it work?
Just what? You pull this out. You start to pull it out. Sometimes it's hard to pull the dang thing out. It's rusty there. You have to put it out.
Oh.
That's it now. That's it now. See, you put it on like this, and you put your four fingers. Your four fingers are in there like that now. You don't say you're going round. You're not talking to anybody. Somebody's coming out. Two of them try to jump you or something like that. Get out of there. And you won't hit them in the belly. You hit them around the face. You know, you scratch them a little bit. You get the message. You get the message.
And where did you get it from?
Oh, I have that for 50 years.
50 years?
40 or 50 years, yes.
Did you get it in the line of your work?
I never used it, no, because I was always in uniform, you know, and nobody bothered to attack you when you're in uniform.
Bill Filan was born in 1907 in Calassa, County Mayo, Ireland. He was the second youngest of 9 children to a family who lived on a farm. In 1928 he upped sticks and followed his brother to America, desperate to flee the hardships of the Emerald Isle, but found himself in the height of the American Depression. Like many other Irishmen before him, he found the going tough. But Bill Filan is a hard man and found work in the hardest arena of them all. He became a policeman in Chicago. He now spends his retirement days in Phoenix, Arizona, looking fondly at the time he spent in Ireland and recounting stories of days gone by.
Oh, it's nice to get up in the morning when the sun begins to shine. Oh, 5, 6 o'clock in the good old summertime. But when the snow is snowing and it must be overhead. Oh, it's nice to get up in the morning, but it's nice to stay in the bed.
No, he had it tough when he first came over, is that right? It was a difficult
He did.
time.
In this case, his timing was awful. You know, he came here in 1929, and then, of course, goes without saying that was the worst of all times economically. And so, for his first several years here, he really just worked odd jobs, a lot as a warehouseman, loading trucks and unloading trucks, and things like that. And many times, no work at all. You know. So he spent the first several years, I think, living with his sister, and then ultimately got on his feet.
And that time I'm the same way today. I'm very economically advised.
Yeah.
And I make $1 for $1, you know.
Yeah.
But I figure I work for 20 cents an hour, you know, and I figured, well, I hang on to every penny I got, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mind spending money, but I don't spend it foolishly.
He went in 1928, and then the crash came around 1930 and 31, and he was working on construction at that time. And they told him where he was working that there was a great danger that the banks were going to collapse and that they would close down, that they had no money to back them up, you know, and that it would be very wise if he had money in the bank to take it out. So he listened carefully to what they said, and he had $1,500 saved in the 3 years while he was there. But he took it out anyhow. He had it on deposit and he took it out. and he'd put it in a deposit box where you wouldn't get interest on it. And a few weeks later, the banks collapsed. He lost his job, but he had his $1,500, and he didn't work again for 3 years after that, and he lived with his sister, and he used his $1,500 to support them for the 3 years. And after the 3 years, then he got back in work again, and then he applied for the police force in Chicago, and he was accepted, and he was a policeman for 30 years in Chicago after that.
Well, the policeman had full authority there now, and there was very, nothing like today at all. Policeman now, you can't shoot anybody now until he shoots you. If he shoots you and misses, that's fine. Then go and shoot him. You know, but don't pull a gun on anybody like that, you know.
And did you have to shoot any people when you were...
No, I didn't. No, I never shot anybody. No. No, indeed.
Did you have to discipline people though in other ways, yeah?
Oh yes, we locked up guys. And I was a lot on traffic. After I come out of the army, I went mostly on traffic. There was big factories around there. People were coming to work in the morning, and they come across a big street, and I had to be there to direct the traffic. And the streetcars were going back and over and everything like that. But I like that kind of work too, traffic, you know. And then you'd be there from 6:30 in the morning till about 9 o'clock of the day, or 9:30, you were there on traffic. Then after they all went back to work and they were all working, you went to major rounds as the beach, you know, and all that. But that's the way it was.
And were there still many gangsters around in those days after the...
Well, as I said, they always rave about the gangsters and do it, but they never bothered anybody. You know, they were in the gambling business and the whiskey business, you know. And prohibition was there at that time too, you know. And that's all they got into. And if you were out making whiskey now or something like that, you're making poaching, or moonshine they call it here, if you're moonshine, and they got wind of you making moonshine and selling it. They come around and tell you. Cut it out, some lad to come along and tell you. If you didn't cut it out, bing boo, they shoot you. That's the only way, you know. But if you're making whiskey, it was all right to make it for yourself. But if they found out you were selling it and make money out of it, they got after you then. They got after you. And to give you warning, just one warning, if you didn't abide, bingo, they get rid of you.
His favorite expression when John's driving is to stay in the neutral zone. The neutral zone, John, the neutral zone.
There's a guy coming like a bullet here. Stay in the neutral zone. That's it now. Okay, keep the right to the right. Easy down now. Make a right here now. We cut the corner. Yes, here.
Just there?
Here, right here. Okay, on the right. Now you make a left up here. A left. Oh yes, I was in a car. The last 6 years on the job, I was in a car all the time. We called it a squad roll. In the olden days, they used to call it a paddy wagon. You didn't go anywhere. But then they made a squad roll out of it, and there is two-way radio there and all that. Okay, I think you can do it now without too much trouble. Well, in those days, there wasn't very little security. You didn't have a pension and social security like you had today. That was one reason, you know. And if you got sick or disabled, you got a pension, right? In the older days, you got nothing.
Right.
You got nothing. If you're out of like the Depression years, in the late 20s and the early 30s, that was bad times there, bad times. There was 15 million men out of work, and it was 85% men that time, you know. There were very few women worked in the older days.
And were you out of work long during that time, during the Depression?
Huh? I was out 3 years.
3 years?
I was a sidewalk inspector.
And what did you do then?
Huh?
What did you have to do?
Sidewalk inspector, you know what a sidewalk inspector is?
No.
Walking along this sidewalk and picking up cigarette butts.
Here, right here.
Oh.
And how many of your brothers and sisters died when they were young?
Yeah. Oh, I had there was one sister, she died when she was 17, and there was another one that died when she was 30. And that's the way life is, you know. The law of average comes up. And you know, the influenza came during the First War, 1914, 1915, 1916 there, and up to 1920. They call it the influenza. And the local people or the local comedians, you know what they call it. The hen flew in the window. The hen flew in the window. That's what they call it.
Yeah?
Yeah, yes. You got it now.
I do, yeah.
But
yeah.
it was an awful flu, and you got the flu like today now, and by Sunday you were dead. And the doctor came along. We had a wonderful doctor in those days too. He was a rank and file. He wasn't a surgeon, he was a regular doctor, and a very smart man. And he recommended whiskey for the young people, you know. And he said, that's the only cure, he says, I can give you. That'll kill all the germs, he said, it'll kill all the germs. And we were young in 1940, 1915, 1916, I was a young little bit of a lad at that time, you know. And my father had come along, and he had a spoon. Drink this whiskey, you're grown now, drink this whiskey, it's good for you, it'll stop your flu. And we take it. It was an awful thing to eat. That's the first time I drank whiskey. But it was sour, and I hated it. And my brother's the same way. We all hated whiskey, right? Because they was burning out little lips at that time. Oh, kids 7 and 8 years of age, you know. But every day we look out the window when we're close to the main road in those days, and you see a funeral coming by. Every day funeral, they were dying by the hundreds. Every day somebody died. And that was a raging flu. And it was here in this country at the same time. You know, it was raging here too. But that was the cure for it. They said whiskey. And the doctor, my dad, I remember my dad saying to the doctor, he says, that's all, whiskey is awful dear, how can we buy it? And he said, buy the poaching, you can get poaching out here. He said, buy the poaching. So my dad would buy the poaching then, you know.
And what's poaching? That's an illicit spirit.
Illegal whiskey, that's what it was. It was made of barley and wheat. That's what it was made of, very good. It was good for you too, so everybody liked it. But that's the way it was.
I think the best story I have about him is he decided to marry his wife, his late wife, Catherine, and he needed somebody to stand up in the wedding. My father was a bus driver, so he got on my dad's bus at 55th Street, paid his fare, looked at my father in the eye and said, Louis, I'm getting married Saturday. I need a best man. Be at this church at this time, and don't tell another soul in the family except your wife, Kathleen. Next block he got off. That was the end of it. Next Saturday, Dad was there, my mother, and the rest of the family didn't know, and they were very, very upset about it as the months went on. But years went by. Yeah, years went by, and now it's like the family story. But that's Uncle Bill. In and out, real fast, no hoopla.
Catherine and I used to stop in a place on a Sunday evening, and I would be coming home after visiting. We stop, and I say to Catherine, "Oh, we stop and have a couple of beers up in the corner." Well, there was mostly older people there on a Sunday evening, you know, and there was a counter there where something where you could go up there and sing a song or recite or tell a story or anything they like to do. But there was a man and his wife there, and they'd come in. And then entertain the people too. They get all the free drinks along with that. They'd come in and they'd sing that song, and she'd sing a song of it a little bit, and he'd sing the song. And this is the way it was. Some one of those days you're going to miss me, honey. Some one of those days you're going to feel so lonely. Miss my hugging, you miss my kissing, you miss me, honey. When I'm far away you feel so lonely. You're going to miss me only. You're going to miss your red hot mama some one of those days. You dirty dog, and you went away, and you left me here all by myself. You dirty dog, and you left me, didn't you? Listen to me, did she say? And all that. You came back at last. You were gone. You were gone for 3 or 4 days. You was out another old bag. Were you out for another old bag? Yes, indeed. And then everybody was getting a big bang out of them because that was entertainment too, you know.
Yeah. And this was all in taverns in Chicago?
Huh?
Or was it down here?
What?
Was it in Chicago in a
in
tavern?
Chicago, yeah, in Chicago, on the south side in Chicago, around 63rd Street. That's where we lived. And Catherine and myself, Catherine would get an awful bang out, and she could hear her laughing a mile away.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So that's it.
Well, Bill arrives every morning here with something. It may be a few oranges or milk or something, but there isn't a day he doesn't come down in the car. And he visits, and then I have to make tea for him. He only drinks a half cup.
Yeah.
But he's a fantastic man.
Okay.
And I'm waiting for him to take me out to dinner.
In the month of October, we'd have a mission there. And there'd be 2 priests there from what you call it, that give a mission there. And tell you the good things in life and the bad things in life and everything else. But the mission was over. And when the mission is over, the missionary comes along and he comes down the aisle and he says, "Do you renounce the devil with all his works and pomps?" You know, and everybody in the congregation says, I do, you know. "Do you renounce the devil with all his works and pomps?" I do. And this man stood up at the back at the last, and he said, "Do you renounce the devil with all his works and pomps?" And this man stood up, "To hell with him!" And everybody was mortified. You know the old saying, because you have a face like a hubcap, that doesn't mean you're a big wheel.
shots a penny.
Oh, yes.
That's a funny one.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't tell you that one. There was a man in Swinford here, and he was, Bolingbroke was the name, and he was a trick of the loop, and he had a shooting gallery. You know, you have a shooting gallery for young lads. You come up there, and 3 shots a penny, he used to say. And he'd holler out like this, here you come, here you are, 3 shots a penny. Every time you hit Biddy in the Diddy, you shoot to win a penny. And he'd holler that all over. And he'd have a shooting gallery. You got 3 shots for a penny, you know, it was a BB gun, just like a BB gun. And you got 3 shots for a penny. Fire up, my lucky lads, 3 shots a penny. Every time you hit Biddy in the Diddy, you shoot to win a penny. So that's
I believe you had an encounter with, or a story of Lee Harvey Oswald. Can you
He
remember any
did.
of that?
It was here in Chicago, and actually I have a write-up on it that he sent to me, a short letter. And it's something along the lines, not long before the assassination in '63, he encountered a suspicious character at a bus station, I believe.
1961 he came back, but there's no record of it. But he came from Russia over to New York, and then he took the Greyhound bus, himself and his wife, and the little baby was only 3 months old at that time. And they came into Chicago, and that's where I met them, you know, at the bus depot. The driver called up, and he says, I want there's trouble there at the bus depot, that's what we got. Disturbance at the Greyhound bus depot, that's what we got. So we went there, and he was there, and I said, what's the drive, what's the trouble? This passenger here, he says, I'll take him on provided he gets medical attention. I said, what's the matter? And he had something like a handkerchief up to his head here, over his forehead, and there was a little cut there over his head, little blood there, you know. And he says, all I want him is a little medical attention, he says, and I'll take him on, but he says, I won't take him on otherwise. He said, he'd come and say, charge me that he got hurt on the bus, you know. And, you know, the bus driver's for the company, right? So then we told him, well, will you come? We'll take you to the Woodlawn Hospital and get go and take. And he said, the bus driver says, I'll wait when you go there. I said, it'll take 20 minutes or 15 minutes. He says, okay. But he wouldn't go. No, I'm not going there. No, he was drunk, you know, too, and all that. I says, well, okay, if you don't want to go, we're not going to force you. Okay. So that's it. But we'll detain you until you sober up. So he had been drinking, you know. So that was it. So we detained him. We took him up to the lockup, and they kept him in the lockup till he sobered up, and then they let him go. In the meantime, his wife with the little baby, she came to the door of the bus, and she was going to get off. And I said, you don't need to get off. I says, your husband will pick you up downtown in Chicago tomorrow morning. And that's the way it was now. That's the last I saw him.
And how do you think he cut his eye? You think maybe he got into a brawl or something?
He was obnoxious, and the way I put it together, he stopped in the bar around the corner from the bus, and he had a few drinks there, and then he was running down the country, and he was going back to Germany, going back to Russia again, and he was running down the country, and somebody came along, gave him a left hook, I think that's the way it happened.
You weren't tempted to give him one yourself, were you?
Yeah, I did. I figured he was bad enough. He got a good beating. But I don't know why. But the papers never criticized anybody or anything like that. But anybody in his right mind. If I was there and captain over in Dallas, Texas, or even a policeman, I say, lock up that dirty dog. He was down there with Castro, down in Cuba. He's a communist, right? Knock him up. But the president is coming in here, huh? And he said, I want my rifle. So the bus driver gave him the rifle, and we put it on the squad roll on the wagon and took it in took it into the lockup man. The lockup man threw it to one side, that's all. It was an old rifle. Seemed like an old rifle, and that's all. If I was in law enforcement or anything like that, and the president is coming into town, I'd have a tail on him. I'd have the dirty dog locked up. Wouldn't you? With common sense.
Interned.
And there wasn't a word about him. He was there free and fancy. But that wasn't right at all. That was right. But I think that they didn't like down Texas, they didn't like the president anyway. You know, so that was it. But I was always saying, anybody in his right mind would have him locked up. Well, no, if you were out there now, say you Lee Harvey Oswald, and you're working there or something, and I get this drunk here or something, I give him $5. I say, pick a fight with him. I say, you don't have to do it, pick a fight with him. So you'd have a fight with him, and then I lock you and the drunk up, you know, overnight. And he'd be in town until the president was gone. When the president was gone, then let them out. That was the old system.
And do you think he was acting alone, or do you think he had other people helping him to do it? Was he part of a conspiracy, or?
Oh, I think, listen, I think he was just a week, 8 days before that, he was down in Cuba, and he had a big conversation with Castro. And everybody knew about that, and then he came back, and he was only a week back here when he assassinated Kennedy. Now, I always believed that there was lax there too, you know, as far as the police down in Dallas was concerned, right? What the hell, if I was a policeman there and if I knew about it there, but lock him up. What the hell, you got something on him, right? You create an incident. That was an old custom. You get them into a fight or something, somebody hit him in the nose and lock him up, right? You got some way to do it, you know, some way to do it. Yes, indeed. But if that was in Chicago, they'd round up all those screwballs, you know, and communist ideas and all that, and they locked them up, you know. Well, that was in 1961 now, I had the run-in with them, and as soon as I saw him at the, after being locked up, you know, and after the shooting and all that, I said, that's the dirty dog that I locked up 2 years ago. 61, 62, 63.
Yeah.
It's a year and a half. 2 years, almost 2 years and a half. So that's the same. I knew him right away as soon as I saw him. But it was one of them, that was something. But I never told anybody about it. I never told the captain or lieutenant, you know, about it or anything like that, you know. I could have gone to the papers and I could have got $10,000 or something like that, you know, to give him a tip on it, you know, and his record and all that, you know, but I never did. But I said it'd be bad etiquette if I did, wouldn't it?
Well, at this point, yeah.
So that was it. That was it now.
Well, I think his head is very much in a good part of the world, because he's always had a lot of knowledge and information on current events and history, and things around the world. But I think his heart is, you know, is 100% Irish, you know, and remains very attached to his homeland.
We had a bull there, and he was getting older. The bull was getting older. We had a nice little farm, and the neighbours would come there with their cows to get service from the bull, you know. And my dad had charged him 2 shillings that time, or whatever it was, you know. And anyway, he got older. My father decided to sell him, but then he wanted to fatten him up good and get a good price for him. So he had to mash potatoes and meal and all that. And he had a big basin, what you call a can, and he'd take it out to the field too. So he took it out to the field this day. He did it several times before, but this day the bull charged him. He left it down in front of the bull, and the bull charged him, and he hit him right on the chest here, knocked him out. And then the bull started roaring, and my brother Nicholas that time, he heard it, and he came running up, and he brought the dog. He knew there was something wrong. He could tell the way the bull was roaring. He had a certain kind of a roar. And he got the dog and chased him away from there, and the bull ran away. So that was it. So then he had a wheelbarrow, and he had to carry my dad all the way down to the hospital in the wheelbarrow.
But do you think the art of conversation is dead? I mean, was it very much alive?
Well, I think definitely that it has died to a certain extent. It hasn't died completely, you know, because the Irish are noted for being good conversationalists. And I think that television hasn't helped it in any shape or form, because I think there's too much time spent watching television and not enough time spent speaking to each other. Because I remember when I was a very young fellow, and people would come in from the neighbourhood to visit at night time. And the only reason that they came in was to talk. And each of them in turn talked, and they told some story, and they had something to tell about an observation they had made during the day, about something on the farm, if they had gone to town, if they had met somebody. But everybody seemed to have a story, and they made the best of that story. They didn't tell it in a few short words. They added bits to it, and it wasn't always true or that, you know, but that was generally accepted. If the storyline was good, people loved to listen to it. And instead of reading papers and instead of watching television, everything you see on television is not true either, you know. So there's no difference really. You know, they weren't telling lies, but it was an art of good conversation that was very prominent in those days.
In my day, you know, over there mostly, there was no radio. There was no radio, no television or anything like that, you know. And everything was more, what do you call it? It was more humour and more neighbourly in the olden days, you know. Now even here, I have neighbours here now, and they're good neighbours, but they come home from work into the house, and that's all you see of them then, you know, after they come home from work, you know. And before, in the older days, they stop and they talk and they shoot the bull, you know. But nobody shoots any bull anymore. Huh? They look and turn on the television and the news, and that's all. I don't think they know how to talk, a lot of them. Huh? They don't. But in the olden days, that was great talk, and you made up a couple of lies. If you couldn't tell the truth, you made up a couple of lies. So that was it. It was great humour and great everything else in it.
Ooh.
That's good. That's very good. Very good. Very good. That's fine.
I can drink to that.
Drink to that, that's right.